Documentation start 3:25/7/2024. I realize that it is 3 in the morning, and I probably should not be awake right now, but I am. And so I'm going to do something with that awakeness, which is different from my usual fanfare. Normally, I scout things out, document them, and then place them on the archive, but right now I'm doing something a little bit different. Um, I have this gut feeling that something is wrong, and I need to address that in the only way that I know how, by covering intel that I already know. Fighting uncertainty with complete certainty. But then again, complete certainty is a luxury I am rarely afforded, so take everything I say from here on out with a grain of salt. You should have been doing that since the beginning, but oh. My name is Maze Runner. I am the head of an operation known as Operation Beautiful Casualty. Myself and the operatives employed under this are... Our goal is to scout Soul, documenting everything we can about all hostiles known. Ehkazier, Bale, Verin, Demix, possibly Merlin, Fulok, and Kizat. If none of those names make sense, that's understandable. Some of them are very underground in terms of the narrative, but two of them should be known. Ehkazier and Bale. There are documentations about them in the Hall of Champions, but those documentations are lacking. I'm here to fill in the gaps. Note that my record starts on, well, around sometime in September, early mid-September. I need to pull up the logs because I had a script and I completely forgot that I did. I actually have two scripts technically. One of them was a first pass, and then the second one was a second pass. Alright, opening those now actually. History script version 1. And then history script version 2. Alright. Version 1's a lot more refined. Okay. Records begins 16th of September 2023. Before this, I did not see with my own eyes. I've spoken to as many Risen as I can about our history, but it appears that unfortunately most has been lost to time. What I have been around to witness, I have taken meticulous note of. I am switching to script 2 because script 1 is a bunch of random shit. Take meticulous note of. I don't view this experience like everyone else. I'm not going after loot or anything. I'm not chasing a power fantasy or looking to expand a horde. I want nothing to do with getting powerful gear. I just want to learn and survive the homicidal space cat that's breathing down my neck. And if you have no idea what that meant, you're in the majority pool of everyone I've ever spoken to. And again, that's what this documentation is for. This documentation is going to bounce around a lot of places. Um, there are several points throughout history that, for the most part, have been lost but are still narratively important. Namely, Season of the Worm, well, Season of the Royal, and Season of the Worm. Season of the Royal was a while ago. Where is information about that? I have that somewhere. Here we go. During Season of the Royal, this is where our timeline deviates from D2 proper. And as an explanation, we are in Lower Soul. We are a mirror of Higher Soul. which is D2's proper canon. That mirror is housed in the center of the pale heart. Think of it as a lake. Across the surface of the lake is a reflection of everything. The reflection spans far past the water's borders, and piercing the surface is lower soul. It's not just the surface of the lake that reflects it, but its depths as well. The problem becomes that the problem is that the mirror is flawed. It is not perfect. There are aspects of it that aren't there, or aspects here which aren't mirrored above. Namely, the fact that there are a couple of rules that apply in lower soul that don't apply to higher. First off, nothing permanently dies in lower soul. You die, and then you come back a while later, even if you're not risen. The difference between risen and literally everything else in lower soul is still up for debate. For now, it appears the only difference is the ability to wield the light. Previously, I theorized that it was retaining knowledge before death. That death forms a kind of amnesia state. But based on the fact that several of our enemies have died and come back like nothing's happened, I think light wielding is the only difference. The second rule is glimmer. In higher soul, glimmer is simply programmable matter. But in lower soul, it's that and more. In large quantities, glimmer has reality-bending properties. Even inert, it can cause local distortion, but when harnessed properly, it can be used for a myriad of things. To a degree rivaled by wish magic. There is only one entity so far that has been documented using this property of glimmer, and that is Baal, VIP 5632, disciple of the Witness, orchestrator of Little Cat Munitions. Baal is an anomaly. He is technically the last of his species, but that is entirely his fault. Baal is a Dolrayan, a alien species from the planet of Dolray, far beyond the bounds of our solar system. Their planet's culture was steeped in avarice, material gain, and wealth, and Baal hated it. His mother was an astrologist, and his escape was in the stars. One day, he stole her spacecraft and stranded himself amidst the asteroid belt that surrounded Dolray, where he found the Witness. It was hovering there in wait, and there he became a disciple. He returned to Dolray, bringing ruin with him, killing most of its inhabitants and trapping the rest inside of machines. Those machines are the Little Cat Munitions machines you see all across Seoul. The Dolrayans inside are prisoners, unwillingly forced to fight us. Harming them is torture, and when they're forced to fight, killing them is a mercy. Unfortunately, as I said, nothing permanently dies in Lower Soul, and so they are stuck in this death loop like everything else. But that's not the end of Baal's wickedness. Baal has used these machines as conduits, ways to accumulate glimmer from the risen population, and I do not afford us the term guardian. We are guardians of nothing. We are resurrected ghouls wielding paracausal magic. Bale is accumulating glimmer for a reason. He's devised a weapon. This weapon does not have a name, as far as I'm aware. But it does have a purpose. Obliteration of everything. By accumulating large sums of glimmer, he is able to locally manipulate reality. And we don't know the rules about glimmer. We don't know the extent of its power. We don't know if certain values of it have different apexes of ability. No one has properly studied this because it's a very little known fact. Bale is the only source of this information, and so it is to be taken with a grain of salt, but then again, so are my words, as I said earlier, so. Either trust the omnicidal space cat or trust me. Your choice. Bale is using this weapon to obliterate Lower Soul. He has been sent by the witness to erase the mirror. Through this mirror, there is time dilation, which is a topic that I am not well versed enough to discuss. But what you need to understand is that Bale communicates with the witness as if it were still alive, and receives orders as if it were still alive. Or at least seemingly so. And Bale is attacking the Pale Heart. I realize I paused there for a moment. I completely lost my train of thought. Bale is attacking the Pale Heart. Our half of the mirror's Pale Heart. He's bridged the gap, so to speak. That happened about a week ago. We have yet to see the consequences. Or at least not fully. There are some anomalous artifacts around the Shard of the Traveler. And that's where I should probably go back to Season of the Royal. I realized I mentioned it earlier and then completely forgot to mention it. Season of the Royal happened before I was here. As I said, I was resurrected on the 16th of September, 2023. Season of the Royal happened before then. And in Lower Soul, our deviation of the timeline starts at the Red War. In Lower Soul, the Uluran won. And I want to state now that I'm going to be using the term Uluran for Cabal, because the term Cabal has some nasty attachments and connotations that I am not educated enough to discuss. The Red Legion won. They destroyed the last city, they captured the Traveler, but the cage misfired. It broke the Traveler into several pieces, nearly killing it. And for this, Gaul was dethroned and exiled from the Red Legion. He was deposed of Dominus and replaced by a different Dominus, Dominus Darth, who then directed the Red Legion to destroy whatever remnants of humanity it could find. Those remnants were on the farm. The farm was raised and bulldozed by a land tank a long, long time ago. But luckily, Risen forces managed to disable that land tank and eventually explode it. At least I believe they exploded it. Either that or they just turned it into glimmer. But after that, they rebuilt the farm, and that's where we are now. The only holding in the city that we currently possess is Bannerfall. Everywhere else in the city, as far as we are aware, is still controlled by Red Legion Uluran or destroyed. The remnants of the Traveler are at the farm. They are to the far north, and they are a shard. There used to be more, but as I'll get into in regards to the history, unfortunately, it is nothing more than a fraction of its former self. The Traveler Shards act independently of each other, moving and thinking independently. And they die separately. Right now, at the northern end of the farm, The largest traveler shard is withering. It is burning. It is screaming. It is being mauled from the inside. Because Bale bridged the gap. He broke through somehow and bridged the gap. He broke the surface of the water. And what that means for us, we're not entirely sure. Bale has been AWOL since. His forces have definitely been present. And he's manifested his arms through resonance portals several times, but Bale himself has never properly shown his face. You've seen holograms in his arms, and that's it. But enough about 5632 for now. Going on from Season of the Royal, we get to Season of the Worm. Season of the Worm started a while ago, and it's technically not going anymore. I really started writing things down on the 24th of September, even though I showed up on the 16th. The reason why I started writing stuff down is because something was found. A very specific something, which, if you have heard of my name, or you have heard of anything that I have done, it is probably relevant to the complex. A structure outside of the rules of space and time, with one entrance located beneath the Cryptarch, one entrance out of bounds on Nessus, and several other entrances possibly being connected to the Cosmodrome. I say several because there's F-02, which I'll get to in a minute, and an unknown munitions factory, which there have been sparse rumors about. I've yet to explore this second factory. Well, okay. I've yet to explore the rumored factory. F-02 is technically the second factory. We don't know what the first one is. And F-02 seems to be defunct. But okay, so I lied when I said we're done talking about 5632 because the complex is relevant. LCM F-02 is a Little Cat munitions factory where machines and munitions are made or stored or something. I don't know. As I said, F-02 is defunct. We don't know what happened there. It is completely empty. The only sign of any kind of life is a tree, a darkness artifact, and a minecart going in circles. And a couple of levers that we don't exactly know the effects of yet. I really should get all the operatives in a room together and we put our heads together for that. But besides, F-02 is an anomaly mainly in the sense that it houses a resonance artifact, or some kind of darkness artifact. It might actually be stasis, not resonance. I've dubbed this artifact the Dark Star. It is mostly made of living metal with a stasis core on the inside. It hovers about a meter off of the ground. It's about maybe 5-7 meters tall in a kind of diamond shape. This living metal is similar in material to the weapons used by disciples, at least upon observation. We haven't been able to sample it because it is impervious to all damage. Solid as bedrock. We've also been unable to sample the living metal from disciple weapons, but we have from scales, and I'll get to that in a minute. Scales are pyramid ships. Cruxes are little devices that they plant. Season of the Worm was our first proper introduction to anything form of darkness. Via Ehkazier, Worm of Time. Unlike her kin in Higher Soul, Ehkazier is not bound to the Worm Mother or the darkness. Ehkazier uses her abilities to police the flow of time, making sure things flow linearly and properly. Though her definition of proper and linear is her definition, and we're not entirely sure if that is the will of the traveler, the will of reality that she's enforcing, or her own idea. Ehkazier was last properly spotted back around October-ish, and after events during Season of the Worm, she vanished. Some reports of her have flowed in from the EDZ and Venus, where she is seen in strange time blinks, little hiccups, where time freezes and you see this massive green shape in the sky, and then everything's back to normal. It's assumed to be Ehkazier because long serpentine form manifesting time energies on Venus, with our Vex fucking with time, and Bale driving a spike into the center of the planet to explode it and use it for material in order to build weapons. It sounds like Ehkazier. And if she's at war with the Virgo Prohibition and the Affix Conduit, which are the Vex that guard and inhabit the Vault of Glass respectively, that would make sense, because the Vault of Glass is a time engine. It is a massive simulation machine where the Vex can locally affect reality. There's a lot of local reality manipulation going on in Lower Soul between Glimmer, the Vex, and Ehkazier, who I'm getting to now. Ehkazier is a disciple. He is a Strand subjugator, which is a Harbinger, who has a strange affinity with the Vex. Before he broke into the VexNet and stole something and then gained control of a portion of the VexNet, Ehkazier tried stealing a shard of the Traveler. Because back around November-ish, there was the device in EDZ. That device never really got a proper name either. A lot of things don't really have proper names. People just call the EDZ device the EDZ device. I call the Dark Star what I call it because I saw that and immediately saw a star, but it's probably not. It's probably some kind of shifting resonance artifact, but you know what is what it is. The EDZ device was fueled by apocryphal tomes fished up from rivers. These tomes were guides on the mirroring of reality. And the device used them as a template to mirror higher soul's EDZ Winding Cove into lower soul, because at the time it just dropped straight into a cliff. The device was successful, but for a while there was a lot of contention around the area. First were the Elixni of House Dusk, raiding pirates who just stole whatever they could find. Then the anomalous energies of the device drew in more esoteric enemies. Taken from the shadows, Vex emerging from the lake, they all swarmed the device, and luckily, thanks to Risen forces, basically all of these attacks failed. I think there was one that didn't, but it was an Elixni raiding crew, and they just stole a Vanguard truck, but that was about it. Now I'm picturing a Dreg driving a truck. Anyways, the device was successful, but for a while, besides the Taken, the Vex, and the Elixni, there was Ehkazier. Ehkazier before hadn't properly been known. He made his appearance in a very bombastic sense. He planted his scale, the Umbraxis, right above the Traveler Shard, which had apparently moved over. Yeah, no, there was a Traveler Shard, the one that was at the farm, moved over to sit on top of the device and fuel it with light energy. Then Ehkazier parked over top of that, so there was just a stack of paracausal energy there. He poisoned the shard, poisoned the device, and then ate the shard. Well, the Umbraxis kind of ate the shard. The Umbraxis is an anomaly in the sense that it is a living ship. It's alive. And I had that realization literally earlier today. Well, technically yesterday, because it's 4 in the morning. But the Umbraxis is different from literally other scale recorded because it had a pulse. It had a respiratory rate. Like, you could feel the air in its lungs while you were inside it. You could touch the walls and feel its heartbeat. It was a living creature, and it still is, because it's still around. We've found blood. We've found shed scales. At the site of the fight during, Season of the Fleet, which was when the whole device thing happened, the Traveler Shard eventually melted through the roof of the Umbraxis, and then it vanished. Later, a couple of weeks ago, we found shed scales and blood from the Umbraxis buried in the terraformed land. And it had corrupted the rock around it to form this kind of chasm. Also during Season of the Fleet, and I know I'm bouncing around in time a lot, this was back during November. During Season of the Fleet, the way that we got into the Umbraxis was via Vextech. We spoke to Mizraxkel, who was able to use the computational power of a very powerful Vex frame known as Chronos' Temporal Nexus. This Vex frame was gutted, and its power was used to create portals. The Vanguard constructed a portal frame using Mizrax's schematics, and then using Splicer Tech and Chronos' core, they made a portal. That portal actually did not lead into the Umbraxis. It led to the middle of the quarantine zone in the EDZ, where another shard of the Traveler was. And we spoke to it, we got an Aegis, and then it warped us into the Umbraxis. Though it died when it was doing that. As I said, Traveler shards speak, think, and die independently of each other. And the lost shard in the quarantine zone died in order to make an Aegis. Several Aegises, actually, in order to arm an entire platoon of Risen. And then Mizrax actually managed to splice a hole into the other side of the Umbraxis, and then we just went up into it. And that's where we found out the Umbraxis is alive. And then Ehkazier yelled at us, and then we fought him, and then we kicked him off a ledge. And then we all thought he died for a while until he showed up during the dawning, where he had placed a resonance artifact at the center of the farm, disguised as a Christmas tree. And this is where the lore gets absurd for a moment. At the end of the dawning, everyone realized if you didn't put down the Christmas tree, and you didn't put down the Christmas tree, then who's piloting the ship with the magnet to pick it up? And we all looked up at the ship with the magnet and realized, oh shit, Ehkazier's back. And then he took that resonance artifact and that Christmas tree it was attached to and threw it like a spear into the Traveler. Because after Season of the Fleet's Umbraxis event, the Traveler shard was actually healed. Like the larger shard that was at the farm that went to sit over top of the device, it was healed whenever it came back. But that didn't last for very long because Ehkazier took that artifact and lodged it into the skin of the Traveler, nearly killing it. In fact, he would have killed it if Osiris didn't take the remnants of Chronos' data and use it to reverse time. The side effect of that is that the Vex don't have a memory of anything designated as Chronos anymore. Or at least they shouldn't. There's a bit of a plot hole there because there's a Chronos frame in the VexNet that you can fight as a simulation, but that's a problem that I will handle later because that's a plot hole and I don't want to put too much point on that. Anyways, the Traveler Shard on the EDZ was almost completely reformed, and then Ehkazier tried to kill it. Osiris saved it kind of halfway by using Vextech. He saved it from dying completely, but it was very much so wounded. And then a couple of months later, because that was during January that the dawning ended, and the artifact was used to attack the Traveler. That was during January. A couple of months later, back, I believe. No, it wasn't. No, it was actually a couple of weeks ago. Is when Bale managed to bridge the gap. Um, Towards the tail end of June, I think the Traveler started showing these weird symptoms of being sick. Its shell started to peel away. It started to smoke and smolder, and underneath its shell was this living metal. The same dark living metal that made up the Umbraxis, and well, basically every other disciple's weapon. At least I believe it was. Again, I haven't been able to harvest material from those. I realize I'm going in circles. Ehkazier is a threat because he can command the VexNet. Towards the tail end of May, beginning of June, he broke into the VexNet, stole a chunk of something, and now has control over a portion of it. Those logs can be found in the Hall of Champions. I'm just filling in the historical gaps. But Ehkazier has developed several new technologies, including wisps and roamers, which are weird sentries and mobile acolyte eyes, respectively. Bale is MIA. Ehkazier is still causing havoc. Viren is another subjugator. Um, their deal is they're weird. I don't know if they're a disciple. I don't know if they're just a particularly tenacious individual, but Viren is probably the biggest source of the whole muddying of the when things die, they lose their memory theory. Because Viren has died so many times. This motherfucker has been reduced to atoms several times, and yet they keep coming back. Viren and their escorts of tormentors. They seem to be used as kind of spearheads in operations by Bale, and sometimes Ehkazier. I have a feeling they're just a lieutenant, and they have a couple of subordinates, which are the tormentors, but until we get any kind of dialogue from them, their sentience remains a question, and their allegiance remains a somewhat question, and their goal even more so of a question. And then Demix. I'm handling the hostiles first. Demix is not a disciple. He is not a subjugator. He is an Alexei captain with a god complex. He's technically a baron, but he leads the House of the Lost. A Kel-less house, as far as we are aware, made up of downtrodden and generally anarchistic Alexei, who are in direct opposition to House of Light in terms of being allied with the Risen. They view us as to blame for their lack of fortune and their life generally being shit, even though we have, on several occasions, offered resources in peace to the Elixni. The House of the Lost have completely denied that. They have thrown away any chance of peace and have chosen instead to be rude and problematic. Demix himself was head to a heist on Mercury, where he stole an artifact from the Ultra Flame, which is a Vex construct, so the Vex need to tighten their security. Actually, no, they don't. They've started using purge protocols, which is Ehkazier's fault, and they're painful. The entire VexNet turns red, and then they deploy a massive tormentor that squishes you, and then you die. I don't like the Vex purge protocols, they're scary. But they have a problem. The Vex have a problem of keeping their artifacts inside of their vaults, because Demix has stolen one, Ehkazier has stolen one, there is the possibility of Bale stealing one, and Mizrax technically stole one. He stole Chronosis. Like, we killed Chronosis, ripped out its core, used it for our own benefit, And then during the dawning, there was a data ghost of it that we fought pretty regularly. And then Chronosis was used again to reverse time and technically erase all knowledge of him from the VexNet. I realize I use gendered pronouns for Chronosis. As far as we are aware, it doesn't have any. That was just a slip of the tongue. Anyways, I'm going to be burned at the stake. I misgendered the Vex program. Anyways, the Vex suck at keeping artifacts in their hands because Demix stole one on the Altar of Flame. No idea what it does. We haven't heard from him since he stole it. And do I even have that written down anywhere? Nope, that's not it. That's where there's a break. Season of the Fleet. Yep, nope. Okay, both of those scripts end at the exact same place. That is completely useless to me. What is Nature's Acme? What is this? Oh no, it's an animatic plan. Whoops. Um, right now we're in the season of Upheaval, which was at the end of Season of the Fleet. Season of the Fleet technically ended during the Dawning, with the Ehkazier fight and Chronosis being erased and all that. I'm going into the wiki right now where you can find a lot of this information. Season of Upheaval. This page is super work in progress because I haven't gotten around to fixing it. Hold on, I feel Steve's. Excuse me. God, that was super, super pixies in these. I hate that. Anyways, currently, Season of Upheaval is dealing with Bale, Ehkazier, Virin, Ehkazier, Demix, technically Xivu, because Bale has a deal with Xivu that in return for, I think it was like 3% of all of her conquests, he gives her War Tithe via ammo sold with LCMs. So all the LCM machines sell poisoned ammo. That ammo is directly linked to Xivu. So every kill that you get with those bullets goes straight to Xivu's tithe line, which is a problem. And then the complex, which is technically a series of staircases and connected rooms to those staircases, has a couple of anomalies inside there. First is Puck, which is this weird creature. Like, there's not really a way to describe Puck other than its attributes. It's a lanky, dark chitin creature with blades for arms and legs and impenetrable skin. It screams a lot and patrols a singular room in the complex. If you know how it operates, you can get around it perfectly fine. But there's not much down there other than a singular chest and a button. That button you don't even need to press anymore because the door it opens is bugged open. So there's literally no reason to go into Puck's maze. Hold on a second. I'm so sorry. I'm having some kind of allergy. Alright. Other things going on in the complex include Merlin and Fulok, but they're weird, so there might be something going on with them. One minute. I actually haven't checked if Merlin is like, or Fulok is some kind of code version of Merlin. Analyze. Zanaphine? I don't fucking know. Yeah, no, it's just Merlin, but fucked up. So Merlin and Fulok are the same creature. I literally did not know that until just now. I'm an idiot. Anyways, Merlin is an anomaly that we don't really know much about. It is, or they. Merlin is assumed to be arisen. actually. Arisen who was trapped inside of the complex for such a long time that they lost their mind and were corrupted by its paracausal energies into basically a living brick. um, the lore on them is basically non existent, even more so now that it seems to have completely vanished. Um, in the past, I've referred to Fulok and Merlin as completely different entities, but now I literally just realized by opening up Decode and typing in Fulok and running it through an Affine, it is literally just Merlin, but fucked up, cryptography-wise. And I feel a little stupid for that. But we don't know much about Merlin. It's kind of a dead end. What else is going on? Kizat. Kizat is a can of worms I barely understand. Okay. Stepping back a little bit. Last month, I believe. No, wait, hold on. Was it last month or the month before? Either May or June. Uh, Firebase Delphi was attacked by the Red Legion. Apparently, during the collapse. Hold on a minute. Actually, no. Let me double check this. I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Let me check the Delphi page. Uh. Alright, yeah. Area designation Firebase Delphi. Location Mars, Valles Marianas, Eos Casbah. Firebase Delphi is a series of tunnels dug by the Sand Eaters. It was abandoned after the Uluran's invasion of Mars after the collapse for unknown reasons. Sometime after, when Guardians were scouting out Uluran bases, they found Firebase Delphi and decided to inform more shacks of it, which resulted in it being used for training in the Crucible. During the Red War, Gaul sent what was left of the Sand Eaters and Dust Giants back to Delphi and gave them the order to keep expanding the tunnel system. This was followed through until the end of the war. After Gaul was exiled, those that were stationed at Delphi started deserting their posts and running away, either going deeper into the tunnels or abandoning the base entirely. Dominus Darth labeled the Sand Eaters and Dust Giants as betrayers of the Empire and to be killed on sight. After the abandonment of the base, it fell back into Risen hands. On the 27th of May, there was an attack on Firebase Delphi, where the Red Legion came back for some reason. I believe it's actually written down in. Hold on, I have it written down somewhere. Where is it? Okay. Um. Did I pin that properly? No. Okay, come on. Load, damn it. Alright. Let's see. Operation Burrow Permute. Okay, here we go. I realize now I'm getting off on a tangent. I should probably get this written down because it's documented literally nowhere else. Um, After the attack, one Risen, Operation Designation LOR 4891, went through Vanguard records and began to investigate Firebase Delphi. The base was not fought for but found prior to the Black Heart events. The Sand Eaters stationed there abandoned the base and left the tunnel systems incomplete, not even clearing it of rock debris. (4891) had a couple of theories about why the place was abandoned. One, they possibly found Hive in hibernation and didn't want to wake them up, because there are Hive on Mars. The northern half of Mars is frozen over entirely, thanks to Rasputin. He froze it in response to escalation of Hive. The forces of Zol and Nokris were causing too much of a problem for Rasputin to handle on his own, so he cryogenically nuked the entire upper half of Mars, or at least the northern ice caps, freezing the Hive in place. The Sand Eaters possibly found Hive in those tunnels, though that was later disproven because the reports we found by the Sand Eaters, none of them mention Hive. There's also the possibility that the Uluran are using it as a base to spy on us, or that they discovered something they want to keep a secret. Over the course of the rest of the month, 4891 investigated the base time and time again, receiving transcripts and trying to decipher the Uluran language. First transmission was 2 days before the first transmission within the tunnels. I found a report to Dominus Darth that was sent by a siege dancer known as Commander Vidic. He requested the Dominus, if it was possible, to send siege dancers into the tunnels to find explosive ordnance and blow up the base. Siege dancers are the demolitionists of the Uluran. Hold on, who fucking pinged me? Okay, it was one of the operatives. Dominus responded and gave the go-ahead, but stated that the Sand Eaters aren't the only things in the tunnels. Whatever's down there scared the cowards away and drew in the Valorous. But if the tunnels are made by the Uluran, what else is in there that isn't from the Uluran? The answer is a mass grave site. Reports later found by Kizat. I believe it was it Kizat? No, okay, so Vidic Primus. Yeah, so Vidic was eventually promoted from commander straight to Primus, skipping over Valis entirely. Let's see. Vidic is handling anything related to Delphi. The siege dancer team that was sent in to blow stuff up died almost entirely, -1. The last siege dancer alive is Kizat. Sorry, kind of dying over here. It's 4 in the morning and the dust is really getting to me. Kizat was the only survivor of the siege dancer team sent in to detonate Firebase Delphi. The rest of them all died to something. Some kind of unknown faction in the Uluran tunnels. They devoured what was left of the Sand Eaters, Dust Giants, and Siege Dancers. 4891 also found such concentrations of strand that they were visible to the unattuned. Normally, Shroud is only visible to those who are attuned to the weave, and if you're not, then you can't see it. But there's so much of it down there in Firebase Delphi that it is visible if you are even if you are not attuned to Shroud. 4891 also worked on a device known as the Arrows system. It is an early response detection system that he stationed near the entrance of the Delphi tunnels, because there's not just the surface ones that you see at the Crucible map, there's also a bunch of subterranean tunnels, and these are the ones that were abandoned, and the reason why Davik tried to call for the detonation of the base. I actually should write down Davik as a hostile, because actually, no, Davik's going to be put as an unknown for now. I'm working on updating my notes as I talk, because I went through this, like, the day before yesterday. But went through it live in a call with the rest of the operatives, and a lot of it I just don't understand, because the reports are improperly formatted, and I struggle to read things that aren't properly formatted. Anyways, Davik called for a strike team to be sent into Firebase Delphi and to blow the whole place up. That request was approved by Dominus Darth, and an entire strike team was sent in, the only survivor who was Kizat, who is currently trapped down there. Kizat has found several things down there. The first was Strand. Second is that the Delphi tunnels change. They are able to shift and change by themselves. Any map the Uluran had on the basis tunnel system is completely useless. Kizat also found some form of portal or frame guarded by white structures and Uluran in blank armor. They're not dust giants, but they look like them, kind of, but they don't have any markings. They're just completely blank. Kizat also doesn't have any psionic powers. It's possible that the weird kinds of power that's going on inside of the Delphi tunnels is causing their abilities to become inert, but they sign off as an inert scion, so maybe they were just born like that. And then on the 5th of this month, well, from the 3rd to the 5th, 4891 was predisposed. But during that time, the Arrow system detected something that was later dubbed as the Great Disruption. Earthquakes and strand energy, just ripping through Delphi. Any kind of darkness energy powered things around the area crashed. Kizat picked up on some kind of energy signal, and the Uluran forces mobilized all over the region to find out what was going on. Delphi was the largest hotspot of the event. Biological signatures were detected and did not match anything in Vanguard records. On the 5th, Kizat sent out several transmissions, mostly about the various threats in the tunnel, which was the part that disproved the Hive theory, because there was no mention of Hive whatsoever. The unknown faction does not use Uluran technology whatsoever. But there is something corrupting their technology. After the Great Disruption, Uluran ships slowed down. I don't know if it was in the literal sense, as in they were less effective, or if the deployment of them slowed down. It's not clarified in the report. Some were patrolling on the 6th, but on the 7th they were all pulled from the area. From the 8th to the 9th, 4891 was down in the tunnels. and they got a transmission of what I mentioned earlier. Egregore infestation. And some kind of glimmer forge. Gaul possibly wanted Delphi to be expanded so he could farm Glimmer and gain power. Because, as I said earlier, high enough amounts of Glimmer cause reality destabilizations. But the fact that there is so much Egregore down there that it is labeled as an infestation means that there had to have been a mass grave. Because Egregore devours dead bodies. Its growth is hampered by sunlight, which is why you can find a small patch of it in the tutorial valley, but only a very small patch. You can find larger amounts in the gravel sector, and as the report says, a ton of it in Firebase Delphi. Yeah, at some point, 4891 restricted access to the Vanguard restricted access to Delphi. 4891 said, fuck that, and went there anyways. They were detected. And the retaliation for that was not by the Vanguard, but by the Uluran. We don't exactly know which subset. We don't know if it was Siege Dancers or Red Legion, but they bombed the farm. That's why the farm looks so shit right now, because it was bombed. Because 4891 went into Delphi, got caught by the Uluran. He's still alive. He's perfectly fine. He got out of there. But as retaliation, the Uluran bombed the farm. Again. This is the third time we know of, at least, that they have attacked directly human stations. So there's some weird strand things and other anomalous signals coming from Delphi. An unknown faction deep in the tunnels, white armored Uluran that don't match any description of previously known legions, and an order by Dominus Darth to pull all forces out of there. Anyone who abandoned their post or dove deeper into the tunnels were deemed as traitors to the Empire and put on the execution list. We don't know what's going on with Delphi now. No one's gone back since. Or at least if they haven't found anything. We haven't heard anything from Davik or Kizat. Davik is probably in deep shit for sending a legion to their death. Well, not an entire legion, but a large strike force to their death. Though Kizat has been sending out signals to anyone who can listen. Uluran or Risen. They mention specifically looking to Risen for help. Not as allies, but as resources in order to get them out of Dodge. Because whatever is going on down there is so bad that the only survivor just wants to get out. They want nothing to do with their operation. They want nothing to do with their assignment. They don't care if they're labeled as an exile and a traitor. They want out. Because death at the hands of the Empire is better than whatever Delphi has to offer. That aside, that is the most recent event. Besides the Vanguard losing a bunch of documentations. As of right now, and I think it's going on until about the 30th of July, the Vanguard has lost and is actively seeking out hidden reports. They were writing up a bunch of things about Ehkazier, Demix, Baal, and various other ongoing events for new lights to read and understand what's going on, which is kind of what this video is about, but I realize it's about an hour long and no one's going to sit through an hour of me rambling without a script. I'm probably going to try and put timestamps, but I don't really know how to edit. Look, signal's down bad here in the complex. But The Vanguard was working on assembling a couple of Risen-friendly reports for people to read, and they got stolen. By who, we have no idea. My bet is on Demix, or at someone from the House of the Lost, possibly disguising as House Light to infiltrate the Hall of Champions and steal things. Additionally, there's something weird going on with the Super Black containment at the back of the Hall of Champions. It's got this weird kind of... It's got a weird vibe to it. It looks like it's made of living metal, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not going to go anywhere near it because the moment I try and touch it with a rock scalpel, I'm probably going to have glaives at my throat. Because the guards in there they mean business. Like, the servitor has attacked me for even going near the Super Black Vault. I don't know if I'm on a blacklist or something, but they don't want you going near it. Which is weird because there's a bunch of documents literally right next to it. But that's neither here nor there. That about ends what's been going on so far. Basically, Bale's inside the Pale Heart. Ehkazier is causing trouble with the Vex. Demix stole something, possibly the Vanguard reports, and definitely an artifact from the Altar of Flame. There's a bunch of darkness energy going down in Firebase Delphi. Ehkazier has been spotted on Venus and Earth. Venus is currently being destabilized by Bale's Cruxes in order to mine it for resources and eventually explode the planet. And what else? Merlin, aka Fulok, is so far a dead end. Also, for some reason, I know I say some reason, I know I say that a lot. There is an abundance of strange flora popping up on Nessus. There has been an anomalous flora team created on Nessus. It's not exactly accessible to anyone who doesn't know how to get out of bounds, but there is a base of operations. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'd have to, actually, no, I can just check my waypoints right quick to see what the name of that is. I need to check. I can check it just real quick. It just takes a second for me to load into the server. The anomalous flora base on Nessus is there to study these weird planets that are popping up. It is Checkpoint Solare. I can actually go there right quick and show you. Let me go ahead and go to Nessus right quick. And make sure I actually have my video being recorded. Is that going to load? Yep, there we go. Okay, it just took a second. Alright. Checkpoint Solare. It's all the way over there. The way to get over there, the way that I usually do it, is with Wishkeeper, but if you don't have Wishkeeper, you can still get over there. It's just a little bit more painful. I'm ignoring that brig. I want nothing to do with it. Alright. Checkpoint Solare. It is all the way out of bounds. Can you unhandle these guys because they're going to be a pain as I try to get out? Yeah. There's a major order to kill Demix's crew. I'm pretty sure there's a spawner for them up there. Alright, anyways. Go here, wait for your jumps to recharge. I'm going to try not to use Wishkeeper. Get up here. Get up here. Up here. Yep. Okay, I was wrong. The Demix crew, they're up here, apparently. Alright. I was wrong. You don't go up here. You go from here over to here. And then up over here. And then down through this gap. Yeah, this is the area technically out of bounds, because the wall was there, but you can get to it relatively easy. And then Solare is behind that wall. You can kind of see it. And the way you get there, without using Wishkeeper, is more tree climbing. I just usually double jump there to save that. And then go through here, here. That's got nothing on it. And then over to here. This is Checkpoint Solare. This is the research base for the anomalous flora. Right now, there's nothing here, at least as far as I'm aware. Yeah, there's nothing here. But over time, this place will probably develop as more and more plants are discovered. Is there anything back here? No. Okay. This is Checkpoint Solare. You can get to it without Wishkeeper. It's just a lot quicker to get here with Wishkeeper. I'd say keep an eye on this, because this is one of the more active areas in the system right now, at least in terms of Risen activity. So, outside of Solare, Delphi, Ehkazier, Merlin, Fulok, Bale, Ehkazier, Demix, Kizat, and Devik. And did I already say Merlin? That's basically everything that's going on in the system right now. I've given a history, I've given what's currently going on, and I'll go ahead and give a couple of closing thoughts. Right now, it seems like Io and Titan are the two main focuses of Ehkazier's assaults. Titan, we have Sloane. She's Doom Guy. She can handle it. Io, we have Rasputin. Maybe. Possibly. It depends where we are in the timeline, because as I said, the Red War timeline is where we deviate. So we're not entirely sure if Mars has thawed out yet. If it has, then Rasputin's awake. If it hasn't, then Rasputin is not awake. I don't know what was going on with Rasputin in D2 Vanilla and D1, so I don't know if we're going to have any kind of communication with him. But I do know that Io has Seraph bunkers and artillery, so if need be, we can boot those up and shoot down anything that comes our way. Nessus has flowers. Weird anomalous flowers growing. The anomalous flora division is working on that. I might try speaking to memes about that when it's not 5 in the morning. I'm going to go ahead and cut the recording now. Miserable.